Welcome to Hope Academy. My name is Mr. O, and today I'm going to be going over a concept called the synthetic division. So synthetic division. Synthetic division. And before I go ahead and go into depth around this concept, I do want to state that this is another form of division in which you can divide polynomial functions. The first method, which I already covered in a prior video, is on long division. And synthetic division is another possible method in which you could use to divide. So be aware that dependent on the individual, some people like this method a lot more, some people like long division a lot more, and it's dependent on the person. And so when you're doing this method, make sure to know how to do it in case for exam purposes they ask you to do this method. But aside from that, long division and synthetic division are literally the exact same thing. And I'm going to show you what I mean by this. So let's say I make up a random, equation to divide. And let's say it's going to be x squared plus 5x plus 4 divided by x plus 1. And as I stated before, just as much as I could state that I'm dividing it like this, another format, and as a quick review, it could look like this. And both are exactly the same thing. It doesn't really matter which format you see it as. You're going to do the exact same thing. But I'll show you how the long division format looks like and then do the synthetic division format. So underneath, I'm going to write long division. Okay, long division, and put a little box so you know that that's one method I'm going to be using. So long division, when I do long division to this question right here, x squared plus 5x plus 4, divided by x plus 1, I usually write it in this format. And don't get confused by the square root looking thing. It is not a square root, it's actually a division. Square root symbols will look a little bit more like with an extra little thing that's sticking out right here, but then this is what we call a square root. And so be aware that this is not a square root symbol, this is a division symbol. And so when I'm doing this, I'm always trying to do is get the first term, and I'm not going to go in depth on the long division, I just want you to see it. So for example, I multiply, it will be x squared plus x, I'm always subtracting, and then they distribute, so this becomes negative of negative, so it'll become 4x plus 4, and then plus 4, and so if I do that, 4x and then 4, subtract, cancels, 0. And so I know that because I'm able to divide this very cleanly, I know it is a factor. Okay? And the part is that this is the one way you could do this. And I want you to see the other method. So the other method, as I was talking about, what's called the synthetic division. And so when I am doing the synthetic division, it's very similar. The end function goes same as the long division, but it's very similar, but there's little differences that do occur. And so when I'm doing synthetic division, the first thing I need to be aware of is that when I'm doing x squared plus 5x plus 4 divided by x plus 1, I need to make sure to find out what the 0 of your x plus 1 is. So what I mean by that is literally make x plus 1 equal to 0, subtract, and x is going to equal to negative 1. So my first step is that I find out that the x is going to equal to negative 1, and I'm going to use that value negative 1. And I'm going to create a little box right here that says negative 1 with a box right here. Afterwards, I'm going to figure out what coefficient or front values do I have in front of these and make sure that their power values are in sequence. And I'll show you another question soon enough as to why you need to keep track of this. But the point is that right now I see that second power is the highest one, so it'll be 1, 5, and 4. Because 1 is imaginary here, quote unquote imaginary, or it's just implied here. It's 1, 5, 4. So I'm going to write 1, 5, and 4. And I'm going to draw a line here. And so that is my setup for the synthetic division. Afterwards, always the first step in the synthetic division is that I am going to bring down the 1. So that's the first step. First step is to bring down the 1. Afterwards, I'm going to multiply the box value with whatever is on the bottom. So negative 1 times 1, which is negative 1. And I'm going to subtract that afterwards. 5 minus 1 is 4. Okay, same thing again. Negative 1 times 4 is negative 4. And 4 minus 4 is 0. And I'm going to draw a line down here on purpose. So the reason why I draw the line down is that I need to remember that this value right here, the 0, is going to represent my remainder. Afterwards, how synthetic division works is that I go up in the power values in what we will call in the polynomials. And so the next value afterwards will be what we call the constant. And this is going to be my x to the first power value. And if I have more values, it will be x second, x3, x4, and so on. But I will make sure to cover a question like that so you can see how it works out in the end for a more complicated equation. And so because this is my x value 1, it's going to be 1x, or just x, plus 4 plus 0 over whatever remainder, and thus because I finished like this is going to be my answer. AKA, and I could state that because there's a 0 remainder, it is a factor. And that concludes sort of how I go about doing the synthetic division process. But that being stated, now what I'm going to do is do a little bit more complicated question that involves the same method. I will use synthetic division, but I'll make sure to show you why it could get very complicated and what you have to be careful about when doing synthetic division. So I'm going to go ahead and switch papers right here. And I'm going to write synthetic the next equation. So I'm going to create one just right off my top of my head. And I'm going to say something like x5 plus... or actually 2x5, let's just do that, plus let's say x cubed minus 2x plus 4 divided by, let's say x minus 2, okay? And so right off, when I see this type of question, the first thing I need to do for synthetic division is to find out what this bottom value, or aka my denominator, and I'll call it my denominator, is going to equal to. So I'm going to go ahead and make x minus 2 equal to 0. X minus 2 equal to 0. So x is going to equal to 2. And I'm going to go ahead and create that box system, the 2 box thingamajigger. Afterwards, when I get this sort of value, I need to follow the coefficient values and figure out what's going on. So my first value is going to be the highest value, which is x to the 5th power. So it's going to be 2. 2. And I'm going to look at where x to the 4th value is. And I'm going to notice there is no x to the 4th value. It jumps from x to the 5th to x cubed. And so because there's no value for x to the 4th, I'm going to put 0. And then x cubed is going to be 1, the coefficient. And then I see x squared's missing again. 0, negative 2, and 4, like this. And I'm going to go ahead and draw the line right here. So be aware, because I am missing an x to the 4th value and I am missing an x squared value, that's why I got the zeros from these two right here. And then everything else does have a coefficient, so I could go ahead and get started. So my first step, as I stated before, was to bring down the first number here. So it's going to be 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 0 plus 4 is 4. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up. 2 times 4 is 8. 1 plus 8 is 9. And then I'm going to go ahead and continue. 2 times 9 is 18. 0 plus 18 is 18. And so be aware that as synthetic division, you're going to notice that sometimes values could get big, which is possible. Don't hesitate, as I made up this question. So it's going to happen sometimes. 2 times 18 is 36. 36 minus 2 is 34. 34 times 2, which is going to be 68, and 68 plus 4 is 72. And then I'm going to draw that line, as I mentioned before. Make sure you always draw that line after you get the last number, because as I mentioned before, this was going to be my remainder. And sorry for the house cramped in the corner, but remember, this is the remainder, okay? This is going to be my constant, okay? So that's my constant. As I mentioned, go up in the power value. So it's going to be x. It's going to represent with the x squared, x cubed, and x to the 4th. And there's a reason why you want to follow this up and keep track, because now I could write the whole equation or the final answer, and thus it's going to be 2x to the 4th plus 4x to the cubed plus 9x squared plus 18x plus 34 plus, because it's positive, plus, now remember, it's 72 divided by the remainder. And what I'm dividing by, if you look at the prior question up here, is x minus 2. And thus why I'm going to write x minus 2. And this will be my final answer for this. Okay? And so that's how I go about doing this. But make sure, the few things I do also want to mention is that, as usual, if I have a remainder, any form of remainder, if it's not 0, that means that this x minus 2, when I divided it with this, is not a factor. And so in case of certain questions that ask you whether there's a factor, is it the 0, a root, an x-intercept, whatever not, be aware that because I was able to I have a remainder, any form of remainder left over that has like a number here, that means that it is not going to be a factor. And that concludes my explanation for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel or like our Facebook page, and I'll see you next time. I hope you have a wonderful day.